Welcome to the Prescription Strength Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lynette Ewart, GP and personal trainer, bringing you health and strength without the hype. Thanks for listening. I am joined today by Craig Jackson of Craig Jackson Fitness, and I thought it would be really good fun for us to record an episode together because you have got a signature program, it's fair to say, called Breaking Fads, which is such a fantastic title. Give us the intro as to how Breaking Fads was born. It's a great story.
So, you work with James Smith as well, and I used to get a lot of comments in my social media saying, "Oh, you look like that guy off Breaking Bad," or there would be, I think I did a YouTube video, and someone said, "Oh, look, Walter Way." So I said to James Smith, "Look, should I lean into this whole Walter White look-alike thing?" And he said, "Yeah, no one else can do it, so start leaning into it." And I thought, well, I wonder if I can use the name Breaking Bad, but have it some kind of fitness or diet connotation to it. And I thought, well, breaking fads, let's break the fad diet. So that was how it was born. And it's like a 6-week program. I run it 3 times per year. And it's exactly that break the fad diet culture and lose a bit of body fat in doing it, and learning about why certain things are fad diets and what actually works in the real world.
Brilliant. I thought that'd be great because the fads are real. They're a bit pervasive. They won't bugger off. No. I'm quite nervous of which ones you're going to pull out because I've probably tried them all in my 47 years. And I thought it would be good to balance that with some of the medical myths that I see as a doctor, which won't bugger off either, and why they're myths. So I thought if we could play tennis with medical myths and breaking fads, then I thought that would make for a fun episode. Mm-hmm. And it might be worth just mentioning that we met in person, didn't we, a few years back in Norwich, which is where you're from, at a lifting event hosted by Barbell Logic. So we share a mutual love of weight training.
How long ago was that? That was, well, it must be 2.5 years ago, was it? 2 years ago?
At least.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it was, I think, probably, because I've been twice. The first one was the one that Matt came over from America, and then the second one was the one you were at, wasn't it, that Mac hosted. Yeah, great day, and I will always credit all of my barbell knowledge to Starting Strength and Barbell Logic and their wisdom, so check them out. So let's get into it, Craig. Breaking fads. How about you introduce the number one diet fad that won't go away, that you would like to see banished from the universe?
Oh, the number one fad. Well, there's so many of them. How do you even pick one? I would say the one that concerns me the most, actually, at the moment, which is the carnivore diet, just because the potential long-term health risks of that. And if anybody is on Instagram, if you go on there's a I can't remember the handle, is it Carnivore Cringe? So these are all people that have done the carnivore diet and they're in forums and they've taken screenshots of what's actually happened to some of them. So some of the negative health outcomes. So that worries me a little bit. And even the people that are promoting these carnivore diets are now saying, oh, now I'm going to include fruit and veg. So that one, I say at the minute, is the one that maybe concerns me the most. And then we've got some of the old school ones from the 80s, like the cabbage soup diet, any kind of elimination diet when it's promoted for fat loss. Now, obviously, there's a place for elimination diets when you've got intolerances and it's trying to work out what they are. But from a fat loss point of view, they're, again, fads.
Have you coached anybody who's experimented with carnivore? I've not, just upfront. I've not worked with anybody or seen a patient. I've only seen people talk about it online. It hasn't entered my real world life.
No, I haven't. Not carnivore at all. I've obviously coached people that have tried lots of different diets. A lot of them like slimming clubs come from that background. And whilst, all diets that work have the same mechanism, which is putting you in a calorie deficit. It's just done in a roundabout way. But often a fad diet, or always a fad diet, doesn't teach you why or what's making this calorie deficit. And some fad diets will say it's not even a calorie deficit when we know that it is, because you can't break the rule of thermodynamics, can you? So
carnivore's interesting, isn't it? Because it's definitely strayed over into medical territory. And I first became aware of it when I heard Jordan Peterson talking about it on the Joe Rogan podcast. And if you're talking, and for anybody, I do still meet people who don't know who Joe Rogan is, because they don't spend a lot of time on the internet, but I think he's probably got the biggest podcast there is. He is the grandfather, and Jordan Peterson also has a massive profile. So you've got these two enormous figures talking about this, and Jordan Peterson's had a lot of health issues, and he was crediting the carnivore diet for, it's not even just carnivore, only eating beef, for a lot of his medical problems disappearing. And, you know, I remember thinking, wow, I mean, what on earth can be going on here? That was some years ago. He's not doing so well at the moment. In fact, I've still got tickets to go and see Jordan Peterson. He's had to postpone because, once again, he's not very well. And I'm not saying that that's to do with his diet. I don't know. They haven't shared what it's about. But time has moved on, and I've yet to see any long-term health benefits from carnivore. But it's probably fair to say people do lose weight.
Yes, because we're eating a hell of a lot of protein, probably very full, excluding a lot of foods from their diet because it's just not possible. You can't go and have a donut. You can't go and have all the ultra-processed foods because they're excluded when you're in a carnivore diet. So it's a lot harder to then eat these high-palatable foods. So you lose a lot of weight. But then, especially if you're eating red meat all the time, then your LDL is going to go up, and you all know the risks there. I just think it's a time bomb, because I would say it's probably, since it's been called a carnivore diet, there's probably been like smaller versions of it. Like an Atkins diet is predominantly meat, isn't it? Now, ketogenic, there are benefits to that with people with epilepsy and stuff, but again, it's a predominantly protein-based diet. And I just worry that people have been influenced on social media by somebody who's got their top off eating off a wooden chopping board. I mean, that should have alarm bells ringing anyway, shouldn't it? Surely.
It's seductive though, isn't it? And I think people we're very emotional, and we're very drawn to things that look appealing and look simple when you're struggling with something. And we know there's no getting around it. Weight loss is bloody hard. But I haven't seen a lot of sustainability in the carnivore diet. It makes you a very boring person to go for any kind of social event with. I mean, realistically, it rules you out of an awful lot of things. And I think if something's going to work for you in the long term, you've got to bring that into the picture, surely.
Yeah. So I'm doing a nutrition qualification through McDonald Nutrition University. It's probably one of the most well-known ones. And they do a live event as well every year in November. So I just went to the last one.
I went to the one last year, actually.
It's good, isn't it? Yeah. So they have like 3 or 4 guest speakers. Really, really fantastic. One of the main things, like through the nutrition course, is always about being sustainable. So there's no such thing as an optimal diet or the perfect diet that everybody could follow. It's all going to be unique to the individual and what you can stick to. So take breakfast, for example. Some people say you have to have breakfast every single morning. It's the most important meal of the day. And we know that some of that's been fabricated by Kellogg's. But not everybody likes to eat breakfast. Some people can't eat breakfast, don't feel like eating breakfast, and they're absolutely fine and still can lose body fat fine and stick to their diet. But that message of saying you have to do that then might make it harder for that person who really struggles to eat breakfast. So it's very difficult to say to somebody, follow this particular way of eating, because that might not suit them. And it's always going to be about adherence is always going to outperform perfection. So if you can adhere to something even just a little bit for a very long period of time, it's going to outperform being perfect for 4 weeks.
100%. Couldn't agree with that more. And I remember the first time I was in Italy on holiday, being in a bar looking for something for breakfast, and I noticed the Italians coming in and having a little espresso, and occasionally the odd one had like a little pastry. But clearly, breakfast being a big thing wasn't part of what I was seeing in front of me in Rome. And so cross-culturally, who's to say that breakfast is the most important of the day? We've just got absolutely no data to show that that is a universal good for everybody. So
yeah, the only thing that I am aware of is, I think it's in the United States, they have like this register. If you've lost weight and you've kept it off for, I think it's more than 12 months, you're able to go on this register. And one of the common things, so I think it was something like 72% of people that managed to keep the weight off one of the things they all did was have breakfast. But
Mm.
there are obviously lots of reasons. It's not just breakfast, and that's the only reason they've managed to keep it off. But there was an overwhelming percentage of people that do have breakfast and manage to maintain their weight. So this might not necessarily be through the fat loss side of it. We're talking about maintaining your weight. So
Yeah.
the thing that I find the most important thing when following any diet is to try and eat at the same time every single day. So you have that routine. Your body is expecting food at certain times of the day. So if you're somebody that misses breakfast one day and eats breakfast the next day and misses it, your body's always going to be that sort of second guessing. So you either have breakfast or you don't have breakfast.
Yeah. And I think that is more relevant the older you get as well. I think if I look at my teenagers now, they're metabolically so flexible and can sleep late and eat late, and it just doesn't have any impact. But I think from my own personal experience and the people that I work with, the more that runs around the clock we've had, the more that predictability is manageable. And I think our physiology starts to want to find a pattern like it does with sleep and all those other kind of inborn rhythms that we've got.
Yeah, I think we just all work better in some form of routine. And that applies to like literally everything. Like my work, I have a set routine through work. My training is always in the set routine throughout the week. So I stick to it the same time of day. It's a lot easier to stick to something when you go, oh no, at that time I'm doing this. And that's what it's like every single week. Obviously, you have a little bit of flexibility. I'm not that rigid. Like if someone says, do you want to come out tonight? And I'm like, no, I can't. I've got to go to the gym for an hour. But yeah, that routine I think is really powerful.
Yeah. Okay. So on the subject of food and nutrition, there is a medical myth that sits in that camp, which will not go away. And this is one of my bugbears, is this myth that cranberry juice can help you get rid of a urinary tract infection, or a UTI, as we call them in the business. To the point that I have been sat in where we do out of hours. It's a big call center. So in between calls, you kind of hear snippets of other people's conversations. And I have heard health professionals give that advice down the phone that if you've got early symptoms of a urinary tract infection, you might want to try some cranberry juice.
Really?
And a little bit of me dies inside every time that I hear it. Have you come across this at all?
Yeah, I have come across it. More from like not the same. My wife has frequent urinary infections.
They're common.
But,
They're very common.
Yeah, in the past when she has had cranberry juice has been something. I better get some cranberry juice in. This is several years ago, but yeah, I have come across it.
Yeah, it won't go away. And it always interests me as to where do these things originate from? Where were they born? And once upon a time, there was some work in a laboratory. They did some work that made it look as though the compounds in cranberries could stop E. coli bacteria. And we all carry E. coli in the bowel. It's the commonest cause of urinary tract infections. And urinary tract infections are really common. They're one of the most frequent things we see in general practice. So there was this theoretical bit of work that looked like it could stop it from sticking to the bladder wall. But like lots of things, it didn't really work outside of the lab. And in practice, giving people cranberry juice did absolutely nothing and probably only served to raise their risk of diabetes, because any juice is quite a high glucose burden, which if you're metabolically a little bit unstable, can be a tipping point for some people. So if you have heard this from a health professional, you have my permission to hand the baton back and go, are you sure that's evidence-based? And actually, I've seen a circular go round the out of hours organisation that I work for saying, can we please stop giving this advice out? There is no evidence for it whatsoever. But these myths, just like vitamin C can help get rid of a cold, and there's absolutely no evidence for that either. But it's like it gets handed down from generation to generation.
Yeah. What is it that said you can't take with cows? I can't remember now. There's certain things where they say don't consume this supplement whilst having milk or whilst having. I know vitamin C helps with the absorption of vitamin D. Am I right?
I think the one you might be thinking of, and certainly the first one that springs to mind, is caffeine can limit your absorption of vitamin C.
Yeah.
So
But the
people,
percentages that the limitations are so minuscule that it's not gonna have any
yeah,
impact. So people will jump on that nugget of information, overinflate it, and then say, "Don't have caffeine first thing in the morning because
yeah.
of this, your cortisol levels will increase," which they do naturally when you wake up in the morning.
Yeah, else you're not getting out of bed without a good shot of cortisol. You're
No,
not
that's
going to be
just not
getting up
happening.
in the morning. So,
It's only a problem if it's chronically high, and the only way you can test that is
yes.
through a blood test, not
Mm,
just by somebody saying, "This is what's happened, and you're gonna be chronically high." And you'll probably see
100%.
that a lot as well. There seems to be a lot of fear around cortisol, and then diets specifically put together to reduce your cortisol level and
Mm,
balance out your stomach or your health or your gut bacteria. And even like the gut microbiome, we aren't even in a position to know what a healthy gut microbiome looks like yet. We still
yeah.
haven't got the science there to support it. So anybody that's
It's
promoting these diets that do promote, well, that do claim to correct your gut bacteria, we don't know what that looks like, and we don't know if everybody's is going to be the same. So, another fad.
completely agree. Yeah. What we seem to know is that a more diverse microbiome is associated with better outcomes, but association is just an association. So I agree, and I think, oh god, the cortisol. I hadn't got cortisol on my list, on my hit list, but it should be really, because again, it's something that, as a doctor, we just rarely get into conversations about cortisol unless you're highly suspicious that somebody has the condition of Addison's
Yeah.
disease, which is pretty rare. I can count on the fingers of both hands how many people in 20 years I've come across with that. I mean, in hospital settings, you might pick up a few more, but you go online and you'd think it's just,
Yes.
as common as getting a cold in winter.
I think I've only met
And
one person with Addison's disease in my life. So yeah.
yeah, it's not common at all. It's not rare. I wouldn't put it on the, oh, I would hardly ever see this list. But again, if you put that on one side and hold up what the internet's talking about on the other, and you kind of go, hang on a minute, we're making a lot of fuss here about cortisol levels. And again, I think it just becomes a vehicle to try and sell somebody something that they probably don't really need.
Yeah, if they've got a supplement for something that they're poo-pooing, then that's the reason they're doing it, to sell their supplement. And there are no magic supplements. There's medicine, and that's where we come and see a doctor. But supplement industry is worth ridiculous amount of money, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
something like 4 times more than the pharmaceutical business, and there's zero regulation in it. It's crazy.
They only have to show that supplements are as safe as food. There is no requirement to demonstrate proof of it working. Yeah, absolutely. So as long as it's not going to poison you, it can go out with a label on it and claim all sorts of things. I think if you're running paid ads, you've got to be a little bit more savvy. But if you look at some of the advertising that's going on around magnesium and collagen, Jesus did a post yesterday on collagen, it's gone bananas.
Yeah.
That you can see that clever people whose whole career has been marketing is, you can easily blur the lines about what you're claiming this supplement will do.
Yeah, and
It's,
even from the magnesium, whilst there's like some truth in that it can help with sleep, it's not massive. And it even could argue that some of that could be the placebo effect. So just the fact that you're taking it, you think, oh, I'm going to sleep better now, I'm taking my magnesium, and then you sleep better. But, you know, I'm all for the placebo effect. If it helps you, then, then great.
yeah. I think if it helps you and you can afford it,
Yes.
then, let's be realistic about it, because placebo effect is real. I mean, there are some eye-watering statistics about the placebo effect of sleeping pills. They really hate us prescribing sleeping pills in general practice for a variety of reasons. But the people whose job it is in every local authority to look at the data and then come and beat us round the head with the data will often say most sleeping pills don't perform better than placebo in the big clinical trials. And yeah, you can't argue with the data. I mean, data can always be replaced and you can do new studies, and we should all remain slightly open-minded to that. But as things stand at the moment, any supplement that is claiming to alter your cortisol level is highly unlikely
No.
to do anything at all. And it's probably just full of bicarbonate of soda if somebody took it to a lab and analysed it. So save your cash, I would say.
And we've
Yeah.
also seen with like creatine supplements, especially the gummies, that even though they say they have these levels of creatine or whatever the supplement's proposed to be, it doesn't necessarily mean that there will be in the product that you're buying. So I'm not sure of what the level of testing is once it goes into production, or what these companies have to prove. But clearly from the creatine side of things, it kind of makes you think, well, maybe not that much.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I've not actually looked at that. I know there's often on my YouTube channel, things will pop up where people have done some testing on the creatine gummies, but I've stopped because I don't use them. I was sent some once and they were really nice, but then I thought, I don't need this gluey, sticky stuff in my life. It'll just make me want to eat more sweets. So I've not really gone into it. And people ask me a lot about creatine. I'm sure they probably do you as
Yes.
well. And it is a supplement that we've got some evidence for. But how much do you know about the gummies then, in terms of the level of bullshittery that's going on in the gummy world?
So they were claimed to have 5 grams of creatine in a dose, which might be 2 or 3 gummies. And James, it's funny, it's James Smith that actually did send them all off to proper labs to get tested.
Okay.
And some of them only had like 0.02 grams of creatine. So they had literally had nothing in them. So you were just paying a stupid amount of money for gummies with for sweets, basically.
You may as well get Haribo, yeah, or Percy Pigs.
Yeah, there were some big names in there. It's worth watching. He's got a whole YouTube video on it. It's interesting.
Okay, yeah. I was talking to somebody yesterday actually who there's a famous supplement brand and fronted by a massive American celebrity, and she'd had one of the products tested and there was a load of crap in it, basically.
Yeah.
Can't remember what supplement it was, but I just thought, yeah, it's the Wild West out there.
I used to buy a lot of supplements off Amazon. It's made me think, well, maybe Amazon's not really a great place to buy them from. So I know that some supplement companies will produce or show their testing for the batch numbers. So, you've got a little bit more behind it than just 4.5 stars on Amazon.
I'm very swayed by Amazon reviews. Guilty.
Maybe not full stop. But yeah, actually on the subject of creatine, because this is a question that I get a lot and I give an answer to my clients about it, but it'd be good to speak to a GP about it as well. Because when we take creatine, then our creatinine levels are higher naturally in the body because we're consuming more of it. So then when you go for a blood test, it sends a false information that your kidneys are not performing as they should be.
Yes, it can. This is really interesting. And I did a newsletter on creatine a while back simply because people kept asking me about it. And there is often a lot of confusion between creatine as a product and creatinine, which if you look at your blood results on your NHS app, if you've signed up to it and you've had a kidney function test for any kind of routine purpose, you will see your creatinine level. And that is a normal value to be seeing on a kidney function test. And it is a measure of one of the waste products that the kidney's job is to boot out into your urine. So if you are increasing your circulating levels of creatine, either through a carnivore diet or you're taking a supplement, your kidneys will invariably have more to offload. Now, that's not a problem if you know that somebody is supplementing and therefore it's got more work to do. It's a bit, I suppose, like I don't know, giving your boiler a bit more work to do. If you only looked at the emissions on the outside of it and thought, oh, crikey, it's not working very well. No, actually, I've just had the heating on.
Yeah.
For double the amount of time, there's nothing wrong with the boiler as such. But there is definitely a hesitancy to share sometimes with medical professionals. It can be a bit of a lottery as to what you're going to get. And I would love to say that all doctors understand the role of creatine and what it does, but that would not necessarily be the case. And so you might easily be told by not necessarily a GP, if you're in A&E for something or at an outpatient's clinic appointment, you might see an eyebrow raised, your creatinine's gone up. You say, oh, it's fine, I've been weight training and I've been taking some creatine. And you could easily have an ill-informed doctor go, well, it's damaging your kidneys, so stop it.
Yeah.
That's not the case.
This is what
that really isn't.
I had that exact thing. So I had blood tests. Oh, that's a bit high. Yeah, well, I weight train and I eat a high protein diet, but it's not ridiculously high. And I take creatine. Oh no, well, yeah, you need to cut that right back. He was saying,
yeah.
There is another test you can ask for as well, isn't there? But I can't remember what it is. So to test the kidney function outside of those levels.
You could, and if you were in a renal clinic, or if you were needing some sort of a procedure where the function of your kidneys was imperative to, perhaps you're going to have a general anaesthetic or something, that might be reasonable to do. But if that's not the case and it's just a routine test and you wanted to see it come down, then I would just stop supplementing for a month or so and ask for a retest. And that way everybody can go back to bed. It's the same thing as sometimes when people make significant dietary alterations and the liver's offloading quite a lot of fat, because a lot of the time your liver will offload some of the fat first before it starts to deal with some of the peripheral fat, if you're the type of person who holds a lot of fat in their liver. And in those early stages, you can see liver function tests go a little bit wonky. And it's not necessarily a problem. It's just a sign that perhaps you are burning up some fat in your liver, and a retest in a few weeks' time, usually 6 to 8 weeks, it's not worth doing in a few days, can present a completely different picture. I think it's always worth remembering that any blood test is just one data point in time. And we just want to see trends more than anything. The problem is getting a retest, getting an appointment, having a row with the doctor about, can't getting in and that kind of stuff. But God.
And it's the same as when a lot of these blood testing private, products?
Health screening services, all these kind of private clinics. God, yeah, they're everywhere.
Yeah, so even when you get all these recommendations off one blood test, when, like you said, really there should be a couple, at least 2 taken, so you can compare data, because a lot can change in a day, just because your hormones and everything's always changing.
Yeah. In the same way that we wouldn't commit somebody to lifelong blood pressure treatment because they couldn't get parked in the car park, they've had a route reception, doctor's running 45 minutes late, so they're coming and they're pissed off, do your blood pressure, it's through the roof, right, that's it, you're on this for the rest of your life. You just wouldn't do that. You'd need a series of readings to look for the data. But I think private health screening, it's not going anywhere. It's part of the world we live in. Most here and the bigger companies will use labs with similar standards, but some of the home testing that's emerging with finger prick testing, and I've had some female friends who've been using testosterone as part of their HRT regime and run up against some wonky results that have been done on home testing kits. So if you get a really wonky result on a home testing kit, then it's quite possible that a proper venous sample taken in the normal way might shed a different light on things. So do not panic if you see wonky results on those kits.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to get your blood, everything checked out to make sure everything's ticking in the right place. But I just wonder whether it should be, instead of when you buy it, you actually get two dates. So we'll take it now and then we'll take it again. So then you're getting these 2 measures rather than just being one and done.
Yeah. But I mean, they're becoming more prevalent. They're not going to go anywhere. It's the territory that we're in. And I'm not saying I'm against it. I don't want to sound like a dinosaur, but I think it's just the caveat of one data point doesn't mean much. And it won't mean much to anybody unless you understand the reference range in which it's in. We're seeing this with hormones all over the place, and it can be really confusing. And then people invariably go back to the company that they've bought it from for some answers and find themselves being sold something else to rectify a problem that might not have been a problem in the first place.
Yeah.
So it can be an issue. Yeah. Okay, what else in breaking fads are you seeing that needs to be dispelled?
I think as if you're of our age, sometimes tracking calories can be deemed automatically as obsessive. And I think it all depends on how you look at using that way of measuring energy. And for me, I always heavily say, well, this is just a tool to educate you. This is not something that you are going to be doing for the rest of your life. It should be just done for a period of time so that you understand energy balance, because we're using it as an education tool. And I think once we put it across, or I put it across that way, it's a lot easier for people to go, oh, okay, I'm not expected to do this forever. It's just an education. And that's probably one of the most common things I certainly see from people that are 40 plus, automatically see this calorie tracking as an obsession. Now, there are certain people that shouldn't be calorie tracking, people with eating disorders, but then if they've got an eating disorder, we shouldn't be dieting, they should be looking at resolving and fixing their eating disorder. So if I ever have an applicant that comes in, one of the questions I ask, have you got an eating disorder, or have you ever had an eating disorder? And if they say yes to that, then we'll say, well, actually, you need to go and speak to somebody else. This program isn't for you. So yeah, calorie tracking is something that we do a lot of at the beginning to have this understanding, but we use something like MyFitnessPal, but instead of using it as what I say, like a reactive tracker, so tracking as you go, use it as a meal planner. So planning a day ahead, you put in your food in, understand the energy balance in that. Then you've given yourself a structure, a plan, so you're much more likely to stick to it than go off, not go off the rails, but just quickly go, oh, let's quickly grab something out the freezer. And it's a lot easier to adhere to that whilst trying to lose body fat.
And I think that you alluded to our age. Yeah, we're in our 40s, and it doesn't help that people like Tim Spector go on record going, we know that calorie counting doesn't work. And I said, no, if you're just going to count things, then that won't get you anywhere. You have to manage your calorie intake. And it is just data. And I think it probably harks back to when people have done that calculation of going, oh, well, okay, that pudding had 400 calories in it, so I'll just go to the gym and burn 400 calories, and therefore it's okay. And actually, I think that's where you're overcomplicating it and misunderstanding the complexity of physiology, which just doesn't, it's not a set of scales where you just balance it out.
So, yeah, and I think maybe a lot of people on social media, fitness influencers, because we only have this short window of time to get information across, so we might talk about, like, you need to be in a calorie deficit. Calories are important. They're important, but they're not the only thing that's important. So whilst you need to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight, if you're in a calorie deficit, but you were just eating high carbs and it's all processed food and there was no sort of nutritional benefits in any of the food you're eating, yes, you'd still lose fat, but it's not healthy. It'd be very hard to stick to because you'll be hungry all the time and you won't feel particularly energized. You'll feel rubbish. So yes, calories are important and having an understanding through tracking, but the types of food you're eating are as important to be able to adhere to that deficit. So a lot of, again, breaking fads is sort of teaching you how to feel fuller for longer on the calories that you're set, rather than just saying, like, you're on 1800 calories, like, sort it out yourself, giving some direction and guidance. And we know that protein is filling, fiber keeps you fuller for longer, slows digestion. So helping people with that. And I don't think enough people are eating enough fiber at the moment. It seems to be a hot topic certainly on social media. So yeah, and something that in the carnivore diet weren't until recently getting any fiber in their diet, were they? They were saying the body doesn't use it, so it's pointless, which, the whole point our body can't digest it is the reason that it is so good for us.
Yeah, I used to work with a pathologist. She's retired now, and she was convinced that we're going to see an explosion of bowel cancer down the road on the back of these carnivore low fiber diets. And I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. I think that the calorie thing is interesting. I also talk about managing calories with the clients that I work with and alternatives if you really hate the idea of using a food tracker. Although most people, I find, I tend to like Nutricheck only because it's got all the Aldi and Lidl products and they're my favourite places to hang out. But most people actually are surprised how much they learn when they just put a day's worth of food in. And, we think we know what we're doing, but actually sometimes, and I have to do it a couple of times a year just to rein things back in because things creep, don't they?
Yeah. Your weight never stays the same. There's a lot of change through water weight. I'm not dieting at the minute, but I'd like to stick in a range. So if I weigh 72 kilos, so if I go 74, that's my top end. If I notice I'm going over that, then I know actually I'm being a bit too relaxed now. Or if I go below, which never happens.
Same.
You have that water weight range, and it's better. It's a lot easier to stick in a range. Whereas I think a lot of people, when they diet, they lose the weight and then they think, oh, I've hit 70 kilos. And then think that's the weight that they're then going to stay at forever, but it just won't happen. And the fact that when you come out of a deficit and you're replenishing glycogen stores and you've got extra food in your system, your weight's going to go up from the weight that you've lost, and the number that you get on the scales at the end of your deficit, the end of your diet, isn't your end weight, because it will go up. And a lot of the sort of breaking fads is showing people that, so learning that the volatility of the scales is completely normal, and then to expect when they've gone out and had pizza because it's high in carbs and because you've gone out, it's got more sodium in it, the next morning your weight will have jumped up a kilo, that it's not fat, it's just water held from the extra carbohydrates and salt. And it's really nice to see that people have that realization, not feel guilty for those things, because it's not fat. You're not going to put on a kilo of fat overnight.
I agree. I think that's really important that people have that reality check, that it would be quite difficult to gain a kilo of pure fat in a 24-hour period. I mean, look at the people who do those extreme eating events.
Yes.
I mean, they're the case in point, aren't they? In that they don't weigh 5 kilos more the day after they've just eaten a ludicrous plate full of burgers or hot dogs or whatever. It just doesn't work that way.
No.
But I have the same principle as I have a buffer, and it's about 2 kilos. And I didn't deliberately set 2 kilos. I just noticed that once I'm at about 62, things feel a bit different, and I get on and go, oh yeah, I'm back at 62.
Yeah.
But I rarely get below 60, and I always think the effort it would take to get below 60, I just can't be arsed, really. No. It's not important enough to me. But it's much easier to rein in 2 kilos than it is 12.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's what I try and get people to do. The other thing I've done, and this idea came to me from somebody who my husband works with, he's got a bit of an obsession with eating rice. I think one of his parents was Vietnamese. Not whether that's relevant or not, I don't know. But he'll only have it in certain bowls because it portion controls. So I don't think he necessarily knows how many grams of rice it is or what calorie content is it, but he's got these specific bowls and he brings them into work, and that's the amount of rice that he'll allow himself. So there are other ways of doing it. If you really don't want to track or counts and that whole side of it just repels you, then you can do it with portion sizes and
portion size works. And for in the morning for my porridge, or I have oats or porridge, so I use a scoop, and I know how much a scoop is in grams, so I have 2 scoops of oats in my breakfast in the morning. And that's how I moderate that, because we've all seen the recommended portions on a packet of cereal compared to when we actually pour it out and weigh it. It's like three times more than what they've as a portion. It makes me laugh because you think, the Kellogg's multi-pack ones, you get your Cocoa Pops.
Yeah.
Every time you pour them out, you feel really disappointed. It's like, there's nothing there, but that is what they deem as a portion. And it's next to nothing.
What grown adult really could go to work on that tiny little micro portion? It was fine for my kids when they were about 3.
I used to love them as a child. It was so exciting to get them. Oh, look, a little pocket of Cocoa Pops. And my children still love them, but we don't really get them now. My son's nearly 16, so he would need about 6 of those to fill him up.
Yeah. Same. Well, my son, do you remember that Crunchy Nut Cornflake advert from years ago where the guy just took the whole bowl in the hotel and poured the milk into the into the actual bowl that you were supposed to take a portion of? That is my son in the morning with breakfast. The milk's still there and he just keeps topping it up. But he's 18. He walks miles, and I think until there's a problem, I'm just going to, I didn't eat great as a teenager, and they have a lot that they can get away with because of their metabolic flexibility. Yeah. So it's not a fight I'm ready to have yet.
No,
definitely
pick
not.
your battles. That's what I've always been taught as a parent.
Absolutely. So I'll give you another medical myth. I'm just looking at my list. I've got a few to choose from. But speaking of kids, this one's quite relevant. And this is the idea that teething can cause a temperature in your kids. So, and again, I do a lot of my working out of hours, and we see lots of little kids with temperatures, and there's often an older relative in the background saying that, oh, they're probably teething.
Oh.
And I don't really know where this ever came from, why this myth circulates. I do remember when my own kids were babies, hearing this from people, well-meaning advice, but thinking, hang on a minute, the only way to really raise your core body temperature, unless you're sitting in a sauna for far too long, is a source of infection, and it's part of how the body defends from it. Yeah. So little kids that are of teething age also tend to be at that stage where their immune systems are switching over to their own immature antibodies, and therefore they're very susceptible to stuff that goes around. And if you've ever put your babies in nursery, you spend the first 2 months getting a phone call picking them up because they've got a temperature and they're not very well. So if anybody listening is in that stage of parenting where your child seems to have a temperature, or that your baby has a temperature all of the time, it's not necessarily a reason to panic. I think there is another myth, really, that you have to bring a temperature down as soon as it's there, and that's not necessarily the case. It's actually your body responding in the way that it should. You just feel like a bag of shit when you've got a high temperatures, which is why you reach for the paracetamol and ibuprofen. But it's not likely to be due to teething, or it won't be. Not likely about it at all.
I suppose the only thing I remember from mine were little is if the temperature goes over 40, then that's of a concern, because babies can't regulate their temperature as well as us. Grown up people.
So they can go into what's called a febrile convulsion, which, if you're a parent and you witness it, is pretty distressing. So some kids seem to be quite susceptible to this, and it's not a predictor of any future problem by any means. That's been researched, but some very young children, even at a lower temperature, can tip over into a febrile convulsion. So I think most of us would want to manage a fever in a baby when it comes, because it's not much fun looking after a miserable child for anybody involved. But if you don't have access to any paracetamol or ibuprofen in the right dose for that child, and you can't get it for a few hours, they're not going to come to any harm in that space while you wait for the next door neighbour to make the trip to the late night pharmacy to be able to pick something up. But yeah, it just circulates all the time. And funny enough, my son didn't have any teeth on his first birthday, and so by the amount of times he'd been miserable and had a temperature and somebody had said, oh, he's probably teething, they were all wrong. He's the case in point, because even on his first birthday he was still all gums, and then they all seem to come through all at once. But I think it's very hard for new parents. There's lots of well-meaning advice that circulates. In fact, when I was at work yesterday, one of the girls in the office has just recently become a granny, and her daughter's breastfeeding and the baby's really snuffly, and she'd said to her, oh, apparently I need to stop eating dairy because it will stop the breast milk making him all congested. And me and the other GP that I was working with was just like, what? Where does this? I haven't even dug into that to know where it's come from, but I was like, no, just carry on. It's winter and there's loads of snot and viruses around, and the best thing to do is just carry on and be patient. But I don't know where that came from. Dairy gets a bad rap. I don't know whether that's on your list of fads, but I think dairy, it's very trendy to want to take dairy out of your diet, and I feel it's important to fly the flag for dairy products, which we've evolved very nicely on, and I don't really see them being culpable for a lot of the things that they get the blame for. Have you come across this much in your coaching?
Yeah, and I've noticed actually on, I think it was social media, I saw on Instagram, I saw somebody poo-pooing dairy, saying about the sugar in it, which is completely natural. The lactose in it is the sugar, isn't it? And then trying to put people off having it. You know, drinking milk is going to spike your insulin, and you shouldn't be having it, and all this sort of stuff. And actually, we should be having dairy. It's great. And even like whey proteins, people say don't have whey protein. It's manufactured, and it's just a byproduct of making cheese, but in a powder form. And you know, arguably, it's just another type of food, really. I know we should have it as a supplement to something, but it's essentially cheese, but in powder.
Yeah, it is just food. And I know I've heard a lot of people banging on about, I mean, I like protein powders. They're convenient. You don't need them. You can be perfectly healthy without them, but they're flipping handy. And I think for anybody who's trying to build muscle or mediate muscle loss and their weight training, making sure you've got optimal protein is really important. And it's just a bit easier if you're willing to use a bit of whey protein, but it's not essential by any means. And some people don't like it for whatever reason, but the argument that they're processed and therefore bad pisses me off, because there's no evidence for it.
It's super low in calories and very convenient when mixed. If you just chuck in 1 scoop of protein powder into your like skier type yogurt with some oats and some berries and some chia seeds in the morning, you get like 50 grams of protein for not next to no calories, but not very much of an increase or a dent into your overall calories, which is then like a big bulk of the overall protein that you need to get as a human.
I agree. And if you're vegetarian, I've got a few clients who are vegetarian, and those who've started off, because I would usually say to people, what I've found when they start tracking their food to begin with, most people without trying tend to sit at about 60 or 70 grams of protein a day. And the first thing I'll say to them is, right, aim for 100.
Yeah.
You're probably going to miss it at first. And if you're training heavy, you're going to need to go over that, but aim for 100. And some people find that really difficult. And if you're vegetarian and don't want to use protein powders, that's going to be really hard.
It is, yeah. Vegetarian, vegan, very, very hard to get the protein up. It's not impossible, but it is harder, especially if you're dieting and you need to keep calories lower. So obviously you can get protein from pulses and things like that, but even though they're maybe not complete, and this is a big thing we see a lot, but they're not complete proteins. But it doesn't matter as long as you've got a varied diet, because then you're getting all the essential amino acids anyway. So yeah, it's harder, but I find that as well when coaching clients. One of the first questions is, I can't get anywhere near that protein target. And I always say, look, we're not trying to go from 0 to 100 in a week. Let's just increase by 5 grams of protein every week, every couple of weeks, and move closer to that. It doesn't have to be conquered in a day. But yeah, it can seem quite overwhelming. And you're right, it's about 50 or 60 grams is what I normally see when somebody comes in to a program.
Yeah.
And then we just work, okay, you're at 60, let's see if we can get 80 this week, and then build on it. But it makes such a difference to people saying, I feel so much fuller. I don't feel like I'm craving for food as much now. And because it really does work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you hate it at first, pull back a little bit. Like you said, it's a process. I find if people work with me on a 12-week program, then by weeks 5 or 6, they're going, oh, I'm still really struggling with protein. And I was like, there's no prize for getting there at weeks 5 or 6. Just keep it in the front of your mind and think about building your meals around it. And eventually it starts to feel normal. And then you're not having the kind of croissant for breakfast. You are thinking differently about how you can build a breakfast that's more sustainable and a bit more balanced and nutritious. And mostly, if people have stayed engaged with the program by weeks 10, 12, and then most of them stay on, usually they're finding it much more achievable.
Yeah, I always find that with my one-to-one clients, it's the 3-month mark. So the 12-week point is when they get things like they almost have this aha moment. It's like, yeah, okay, I get it. It's all making sense. It's clicked into place. And that's probably quite a good message. Like 3 months, you got to give something at least 3 months to really start to see habits starting to change. And even that's probably still quite short term. But yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. And especially if you've got a long way to go, we could be talking a year, 2 years before things are probably where you want them to be.
But what is it about us as people that we spend years gaining weight and then expect to lose it in 8 weeks?
Yeah, I know.
Like, it didn't go on in 8 weeks, mate. You took your eye off the ball for the last 3 years, and all of a sudden you want to fix it, and that just isn't the way that it works. And I think, it's the 3 months thing's interesting because I use that in medicine as well. So if I'm starting a new medication, HRT is a really good example in that a lot of people will start it and initially feel great, or initially feel nothing and have to tweak the dose, but you need to run it in for at least 3 months because a fair bit of life's weather has kind of run through the system after 3 months, and you'll have been tested, and 6 months is even better. Some painkillers, I know if you're in pain, you want it to be gone by dinner time, and you don't want to be told that it's going to take a while. Antidepressants can take 6 to 8 weeks to even just on the beginning dose for them to start to work. But I think the speed of life has changed our expectations about so many things, and we want results now.
We are impatient, aren't we? I think I'm still impatient.
I'm the worst.
I don't think I'll ever change. But I've got lots of great clients, but one client who's been with me since, I would say, beginning of June. He's like nearly 25 kilos down. And
wow, amazing.
Yeah, he's been really, really great. And in this check-in this week, I said, you probably don't look at these pictures, but this is you when you started, and this is you now. And I said, you're done an incredible journey. Still got a little bit of way to go. But his then came back to me. It's sometimes you forget how far you've come unless you look back. And it's really important just to take a moment and think, right, where was I two weeks ago? Where was I a month ago? Where was I 3 months ago? And then just be please with yourself, celebrate every single win, because it's, even if your journey's still a long way to go, look back where you've come from.
Yeah.
And that might just give you the motivation to think, yes, this is good. We're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I did exactly that last night. I mean, we're recording this at the end of the year. It'll probably be the new year by the time it goes out, but it was my last group call of the year. And I said, ladies, bring something that's been a positive, because, I've got some ladies who can be a little bit self-critical, but I said, I want everybody to at least bring one thing that has been positive. And I think it generated a lot of them to look back. And one of my clients who's worked with me for over a year, and she said, actually, apart from walking, this is the only time I've ever stuck to any exercise in my entire life. And she's 60.
Oh, brilliant.
And so it was really nice to actually go, yeah, we can all find tons of stuff to criticize ourselves about, but let's just take a moment to look back. And, some have been with me for a couple of months, some much longer, but it was lovely. I came off the call feeling really energized, thinking and I've had to do this with business, I'm sure you have as well, is that you're constantly looking to the next thing and the next project. And actually here we are at the end of the year and go, and my thing to share with them was, I think I finally worked out how much is achievable in a day. Because when you work for yourself, there's infinite amount of things you could be working on. And for a long time, I was just trying to cram in far too much and then feeling crap at the end of the day that I've not achieved at all. And actually all I needed to do was just go, what would I say to a client if they were trying to fix everything? Oh, move the goalposts a little bit. So
give yourself some
follow our own advice.
Yeah, it's hard when you run your own business, isn't it? And it must be the same like with our bodies. Like, you're with it all the time, you're thinking about it, and sometimes it's very difficult just to sort of switch off for 5 minutes or realize that you don't have to do it all. And sometimes I struggle to switch off, and although I have got better as the years have gone on, but still there's always something you can add to the list.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's just managing that little gremlin, Steve Peters would call it. I won't start on a detour about Steve Peters, but Craig, is there anything else you want to add about breaking fads? Tell people why they should consider the next intake.
So the next one will be on the 9th of February, and it'll run for 6 weeks. If anybody wants to find out some information about it, probably by the time this goes out, if you go to craigjackson.fitness on Instagram or YouTube or TikTok, there will be a link in my bio which will have like a waiting list and all the information about it. So if you're remotely interested, pop your name down. There's no obligation to sign up. You just get all the information before everybody else, and those on the list normally get a bit of a discount as well. But it's great. We have like a community of people all supporting each other, some weekly challenges, and it's about the education around it. So like I was saying at the beginning, it's like to teach you why. So we have a webinar every Tuesday, and there's exercise programs for those that want to exercise. Not everybody wants to, or is it at that stage ready to. But you have a coach that will check in with you and support you for the 6 weeks to get you to where you want to get to.
Brilliant. And I think there is no shortage of fads out there. They're not going anywhere. So countering that with sensible, sustainable advice is exactly what the industry needs, because round every corner and every next post that's waiting on your scroll will be somebody trying to flog you something that sounds too good to be true. And it probably is.
Yeah, I think that's it. If it sounds too good to be true, or it offers some kind of shortcut, then it's a fad. It's not real.
Yeah.
It's there are no such things as shortcuts when it comes to our body. We need to spend a bit of time. And forgetting dieting, and this will probably be on the top of your list of reasons why we should exercise, is I worked in a hospital for a year last year. I worked on a frailty ward, and it was it was night and day. Those that did some form of exercise, bearing in mind the people in these frailty wards didn't would have been more active than the population now, so our generation now. So those that were more active were able to still move around, maybe with a frame, but still be able to move around. And those that weren't, in their younger years, and when I say younger years, I'm talking like 40s, 50s, 60s, were now sort of bed bound. So I think strength training, which I know prescription strength is what a lot of what you're about, and part of what I build into my product or services, is probably more important now than ever, to sort of stave off that frailty, because it's only going to happen to people at a younger age. In fact, I went to, they did, what do they call it? It was a talk on frailty but they called it something. I've forgotten off the top of my head. And the doctors there were concerned that the frailty wards that we have now are just not going to be able to cope with the amount of frailty that we're going to have in the future if it's not sort of taught upstream. So even in schools, it needs to be talked about the importance of strength training and exercise,
because we're living longer with more disease, and everything around us is built for comfort. And it doesn't mean that you have to become a fitness fanatic or anything.
No, exactly not.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the message that people who listen regularly will know is that just start doing something, because if you don't start now, when are you going to start? And that's what my Strength Foundations program is about. It's a beginners program. I have a Balance for Life program as well for people who just need to work on balance and aren't even ready for training. There is an entry point for everybody, but if you're finding barriers to starting, then we need to talk. because there is literally, I coached somebody who was end stage with cancer. He had, I can't remember where the primary was, but he definitely had metastases in his brain, and as well as Parkinson's, and he'd been fit all his life, and nobody would help him. And I understand the legality and the nervousness of people in that space, but I think as a doctor, I don't see barriers sometimes. And actually working with him for just that kind of half an hour, 40 minutes once a week, he was able to tap into something that he remembered was part of who he was. He's passed away since, but it was just nice to be able to go, look, yes, we can find something. And he used a band and he used something really light, and we used a chair, but we found a little program that he was able to do instead of just being a patient all of the time. There really is a program for anybody. I'll let you off if you're bedbound. They're allowed a free pass, but thinking about that, you could do upper body stuff if you're if you've got use of your upper body.
Well, one thing I used to do in the hospitals was, because we wanted to try and reduce deconditioning whilst in hospital, so that you come out of hospital and you're still able to work. Because 10 days, is it something like 10 days in bed, you lose a crazy amount of strength and muscle, certainly in later life. So we did, very simple things: sit to stand, balancing, all that sort of stuff. And those that were bedbound, we could still get people moving with the ball, passing the ball, lifting overhead. So just trying to encourage and have some form of movement, because as soon as that stops, it's not pretty. So
yeah, I did. Funny enough, I covered that on a newsletter a few weeks ago. I can't remember what the government were yapping on about, some initiative with an app or something else that I thought isn't really going to reach that many people or change many lives. And I pointed out that there's actually not a lot to do when you're in hospital. I mean, obviously, if you're really sick and you're recovering, then that's one entity. But there are a lot of people stuck in hospital for other reasons, but there aren't the people going in to help them move around or come for a walk. And actually, we could mobilize volunteers to provide that service. Does anybody want to come for a bit of a walk, a change of scenery, get some daylight? But they're all in survival mode. That's the problem, and this is where I have these fantastic ideas, but then this reality check of going back into the hospital and going, oh yeah, actually, we've got people on ambulances for 16 hours because they can't be offloaded. No one's gonna take this on board just yet. But that is a rant for another day. Anyway, Craig, I think that's been a great episode. If people like it and want us to do a follow-up episode, then they know how to reach me. Craig, I'll put your contact details your links in the show notes as well, so people can follow you and enjoy your content, which is always entertaining, and you put a lot of work into it and it pays off. So
thanks very much.
Thanks everyone for listening.
I can't believe an hour's gone already. It's flown by.
I know, it flies, doesn't it?